This is a Dynamite Network podcast.
Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are doing another Spooktober duel, this time pitting the dark sorcerers of Felix Faust and Baron Mordo against each other.
Yeah, basically my wife told me that if Marvel doesn't fucking win one, that she's going to divorce me. So there's a lot riding on this one. No, literally, she said like in the last episode, she was like, I'm sick of this shit. So we're really riding on this one, guys. Baron Mordo, I think, has a good chance of winning this.
I don't think that's right. I think DC is going to get another win. I think you're fucked.
I think you're a fuck.
I think that's a compliment. I'm not 100% though. But we're going to run the stats and figure out who's going to win between those two characters later on in the episode. Before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news, of which there was quite a bit because we had New York Comic Con this past week. So we got a Wonder Man official trailer, a Bat-Fam official trailer. We learned that Marvin Crondon Jones III is going to play Tombstone in Spider-Man Brand New Day. And we learned that Batman Knightfall animated films are in the works. As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. Our artificially intelligent duel simulator, AJ9K, has a quick message for our listeners, so listen up.
Why, hello there. Do you want even more from this podcast? Then become a part of the Dynamic Duel community on Patreon, where you can choose from 3 tiers. The Dynamic 2.0 tier gives you access to our Discord chat server, the Fantastic 4 tier gives you 2 bonus episodes each month, and the X-Force tier makes you an executive producer of this show. Lastly, the Dynamite Podcast Network tier lets you create your own podcast using this Monte Carlo simulator. Johnny and Joe will help you develop your show, provide graphic support and consultation, and get you simulation results. Pitch the twins your ideas via email at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. Check it out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. Pip pip cheerio.
Thanks, AJ9K, and thanks to everyone who supports the podcast. Guys, be sure to tune into the other shows on the Dynamite Podcast Network this week, including the Console Combat Podcast, where hosts John and Dean simulate battles between popular video game characters. And yesterday's episode, they celebrated their 100th episode with a special call-in show. I personally was not able to call in at the time they were live streaming, but I did send a voice note in. Super proud of those guys for making 100 episodes. It's not easy to do for a podcast, so be sure to tune into that. It's a huge deal.
Over on the Max Destruction podcast, hosts Scotty and Gilly pit your favorite action heroes from film and television against each other. On Wednesday, they're going to find out who would win between Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers.
That'll be a fun one. On the Senjo World podcast, host Zachary Hepburn speculates on fights between fan-favorite anime and manga characters. In his next episode, Zach is revealing who would win between Whitebeard and Kenpachi, both from One Piece.
Visit dynamicpodcasts.com or click the link in our show notes to listen to all of the shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network.
But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize!
The No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on Instagram for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week we asked you guys, what do you think has been the scariest moment in a Marvel or DC film or TV series? And we asked this because it's Halloween season. Got a lot of great answers. Let's run down our honorable mentions as well as the No Prize winner.
Our first honorable mention goes to Travis Herndon, who said,
What's up, Dynamic Dudes? Travis here. Shout out to my evil twin. So my scariest moment would have to be watching the Flash movie. No, psych no. But my answer would have to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3's Rocket's backstory. Just, while it's not like a spooky, scary thing, just seeing like what Rocket and the rest of the animals there had to go through with the experimentation and the body modifications, that is kind of scary to watch, especially if you're an animal lover. So that's my pick, Rocket's backstory.
Yeah, that was really creepy in like a body horror sense. The experiments that the animals went through under the high evolutionary was not just like creepy to look at, but it was also really uncomfortable to think about in terms of like animal torture. You had Lila, the otter, whose like arms were missing, and then Teefs, who, if I remember correctly, had wheels, and then there was Floor, the rabbit, who they gave like spider legs and like removed its entire jaw. It was truly horrifying.
Yeah.
Great answer, Travis. Our next honorable mention goes to Mason Thompson, who said,
What's up, y'all? I kind of had to think about this, but once I thought about it, immediately the trench attack from Aquaman. Oh my gosh, seeing that, it just gives like Jaw vibes, or like 30 meters down, like just all of them surrounding them. Terrifying, dude. Had me butt clenched. All right, thanks. Peace.
I too was butt clenched during that scene. It was really well done by horror master James Wan, who directed Aquaman. I have a feeling the Trench were put into that movie specifically for that scene, so that he could exercise his horror talent in the movie.
I haven't seen the movie too many times, but yeah, that scene does stick out to me. I remember just seeing like the entire swarm of Trench. Like there were so many more than you could possibly fathom down in those depths. And I was really like nervous for how Aquaman was going to get out of that.
Well, even before that, when they're still on the boat and they're climbing on board and like breaking windows and stuff like that, that was wild.
Great answer. Our next honorable mention goes to Alex Albro and by Dear Bangora, who gave the same answer. And that is...
Hey guys, I know it's iconic, but the scariest moment in a Marvel movie for me, honestly, is the blood rave in the first Blade movie. It's just freaky to look at, man, especially for the time. You know, it's just a scary image, odd way to start a movie. Not sure I was there for it. Kind of made me freak out a little bit going into the first Blade movie. You know, I'm just out here trying to ice skate uphill, not take a literal bloodbath. Thanks, guys.
By Dynamic Duel, I think the scariest moment has to be the blood rave during Blade. I think that was terrifying, just to be put in that position and be surrounded by vampires, and when blood pouring must be extremely devastating. This is Badir. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like the blood rave scene is kind of like a pop culture touchstone. Like a lot of people know about the blood rave scene, probably even if you haven't seen the Blade movie, I think. But I remember like seeing the movie in theaters when it came out in 1998. And Jesus, I was only like 12 years old. But I remember the guy at the club and like all of a sudden stuff started dripping on him. And he was as confused as the audience was. And then we realized that it was blood. And I just remember being like, holy shit. Like, oh no. Because it all started pouring. And then it turns out literally every single other person at that rave was a vampire. Like he was the only human. That was nuts. I was like, this is so nightmarish. Like what a crazy concept for it to be just raining blood on you and just, you're totally fucked. Like there's no way you're getting out of it. And then of course Blade shows up and saves the day. But yeah, it was pretty freaky on that first watch. And then on subsequent watches, it kind of became cool because you knew that Blade was coming and that you were about to get a great action scene. But yeah, that first time was really unsettling.
It's still my favorite scene from a Blade movie. And it was like the first Blade movie scene.
Yeah.
They just nailed it right out the gate.
For sure.
Great answer, Alex and by Dear. But the winner of this week's No Prize is Lorenzo Valdez, who said,
I would say that the scariest moment in a Marvel or DC movie is in The Dark Knight when they're in Mayor Garcia's office and the imposter Batman slams against the window. And I picked this moment because that's a movie I've seen so many times, and yet over and over and over again, the moment works as a jump scare for me. Klana forever and always, bye-bye.
I still remember physically jolting out of my seat when that imposter Batman slammed against Mayor Garcia's window. I was not expecting that. It kind of came out of nowhere. It's like the ultimate jump scare within a superhero film.
For sure. I could even concede that this is definitely the scariest moment out of all the Marvel and DC films. I remember jumping in my seat too. And, you know, it's like unfair because you're not expecting it because The Dark Knight is not a horror film. I remember like not appreciating it in the theaters when it happened. I was like, I didn't sign up for this shit. Like, what's going on here? Is this a scary movie now? Am I going to have to expect this later on? But no, I thought it was a really effective moment in selling the shock of the Joker's actions and how he is just chaos incarnate.
Yeah, you never quite knew what he was going to do and when he was going to do it. And the video that was attached to the imposter Batman of the Joker torturing him, that was also pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
There are a lot of terrifying Joker moments in that film, but that is the standout one. So great answer, Lorenzo Valdez. You win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on in this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, this past week was New York City Comic-Con, where we got a lot of Marvel television news. They had an entire panel alongside the Marvel Animation division. We got some looks at Daredevil Born Again Season 2, where we got to see a trailer that also featured Jessica Jones, although that trailer wasn't featured publicly. It was leaked, but we'll wait for that to be officially released so that people could see it. There was also news about Vision Quest and X-Men 97 and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2. But the main news that we got that was officially released was a trailer for Wonder Man, which is a television series that's going to be debuting in January of 2026. Its release date got pushed back a little bit from its original December date. And I gotta say, I knew that they were going to focus on Simon Williams as an actor within this Wonder Man series, and that Wonder Man was basically a role that he was going to play. That's all fine. You know, Simon Williams is one of the only superhero actors in Marvel Comics, and it is definitely a unique approach and angle that we haven't really seen before within these Marvel shows and films. That being said, my biggest takeaway from the Wonder Man trailer was that this does not feel at all like a superhero show.
And it seems intentionally to be that way. Like they were trying to do something completely different within the genre. I don't quite know if I like the idea or not, just based on this trailer.
I mean, I'll say that the show looks good for what it is. I kind of like how meta it is, how this auteur film director is recreating the Wonder Man popular television series from either like the 70s or 80s. I don't know. It looks like Flash Gordon to me, which is pretty interesting. But, you know, the origin of Wonder Man from the comic books is that he was kind of like a Tony Stark rival whose business was driven into the ground. He went to prison for shady business dealings, and then Baron Zemo offered him a chance to get back at Tony Stark by undergoing an experiment that turned his body into ionic energy. I mean, we go into his backstory in our Captain Atom versus Wonder Man Duel episode. This looks completely removed from that. Now, maybe that whole backstory will kind of be loosely adapted into the fictional backstory of the Wonder Man character within the series that they're adapting in this show. And that would be great, but that's definitely not going to be the origin story for Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's character.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if we're actually going to see Yahya Abdul-Mateen as Wonder Man. And is he going to throw hands? I'm not convinced by this trailer.
I don't know if we'll see Yahya in his ionic form. I'm sure we'll definitely see him in the Wonder Man suit. I'm assuming that at some point his character will get superpowers that are similar to Wonder Man's power set from the comic books. And then he'll be an actor who played the role of Wonder Man, who became a superhero during the filming process, and then goes on to fight evil after making this movie.
I feel like it's not going to be that way just because they anticipate the audience expecting something like that. And I think they want to do something completely different with this.
Yeah, they might pull like a She-Hulk or something where there is no big fight between good versus evil in the show's climax and maybe subvert it in some way, but that wouldn't be satisfying, just like how the end to She-Hulk wasn't satisfying. I hope they don't do that. I hope this character becomes an actual superhero and doesn't just play one.
I love that Ben Kingsley is returning as Trevor Slattery. Like, that was one of my favorite parts of this trailer, just seeing him as that character again.
His Trevor Slattery is great, for sure. I'm wondering if Simon Williams gets the role of Wonder Man in this movie, then who is Trevor going to play, considering that he also auditions for the same part? I guess we'll find out when the show comes out on January 27th.
In DC news, we got the official trailer for Prime Video's Bat-Fam animated series. This is a spin-off of the holiday film they put out a few years ago, Merry Little Batman, which we reviewed, which I thought was great for the family. After watching this trailer, I'm less enthused by the whole approach they decided to take with this show. When I hear Bat-Fam, I think Nightwing, Red Hood, Robin, Batgirl, that whole cast of characters. But based on this trailer, we're getting a pyrokinetic named Claire, Alfred's niece Alicia, a ghost of Ra's al Ghul, a geriatric man-bat. It's just fucking weird.
The Bat Fam nobody asked for.
Exactly. And again, I love the charming animation style. The character designs are actually pretty great, especially when it comes to like Killer Croc and Clayface and stuff like that. But it's just so different from what I was hoping they would do that it's really hard to get excited about this show.
Well, I mean, one of the appeals of Merry Little Batman was seeing how that particular art style depicted characters that you know and love, like Batman, like the Joker. It was all just part of the magic, right? And yeah, you're right. Seeing characters like Clayface and Killer Croc adapted in this style looks like a whole lot of fun. I also was really hoping to see how they were going to take the characters that we're used to seeing in the Bat family and depicting them in that art style too. Like, I imagine that Nightwing would be like really buff and then like they really focus on his glutes, right? And Red Hood would be real like emo, you know, always having his head down and stuff like that. It would have been cool to see in this style of animation.
Absolutely. And so we have these characters in the trailer, and I'm just left wondering why? Like, why would you take a stable of characters that are beloved amongst comic fans and just completely disregard it? I'll probably still end up watching this show because I have Prime, and why not? And I may actually find the humor and storytelling charming, but I can't stress enough how much they dropped the ball and how disappointed I am that this should have been something very different.
Yeah, I mean, you may end up liking it, but even if you do, you're still going to wonder what could have been if they gave you more of what you wanted.
All in all, there's a lot of questionable decisions for this show and with Wonder Man, so that brings us to our question of the week. Regarding the Wonder Man and Bat Fam series trailers, what the fuck did I just watch?
Wrong answers only. I guess a good way to approach this question is if you had to retitle these shows to be more in line with your own personal thoughts on the trailers, what would they be called?
Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message could be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram. Be sure to answer before October 18th.
In other Marvel news, we learned this past week, according to Deadline, that Marvin Jones III, aka Crondon, is going to play the crime boss Tombstone in the upcoming Spider-Man Brand New Day film. Tombstone being a Spider-Man villain, a street-level Spider-Man villain, one of the enforcers of the Magia crime family. The character appeared in the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse film, where he was actually voiced by Marvin Jones III. So it'll be cool to see him now play that role in live action.
I mean, if he could do it any differently from how he played Tobias Whale in the Black Lightning TV series, I'm skeptical.
That's right. Yeah, he did already play a DC villain who was very similar, at least I guess in attitude, if not in power set. I don't know what Tobias Whale's powers are, actually.
Well, he's a albino gangster, essentially. A crime boss.
Well, that's what Tombstone is. He's an albino gangster. Okay, all right. Well, we'll see how this goes. I'm sure he'll take a somewhat different approach from his role in Black Lightning, but it's cool that he'll have done both a Marvel and DC live-action villain role when this film comes out.
The inclusion of Tombstone definitely reinforces the idea that this is going to be a street-level film, which is very interesting to me.
Yeah, it's going to have Tombstone in it. It's going to have the Punisher in it. It's going to be a very different type of film than what we've been getting from the Spider-Man franchise, I think. It's going to be more grounded, maybe. That'll be pretty interesting to see. Execs have made some comments that there are some story tie-ins from Daredevil Born Again Season 2. If you want to learn more about Tombstone, go ahead and check out our Duel episode where we pit him against Blockbuster. And hopefully we'll get to see what the character looks like, either in set videos or an upcoming trailer or something like that. Again, the movie is going to come out in 2026 on July 31st.
In DC news, my favorite news to come out of New York Comic Con, it was revealed that the Batman Knightfall storyline is being put into production as a multi-part animated film. Part 1 is coming out next year in 2026, and it's going to focus on Bane releasing Batman's Rogues Gallery from Arkham Asylum and Batman's quest to capture all of them. Knightfall is one of my favorite stories from the comics. It spanned multiple Batman series written by some of Batman's best writers from history, including Doug Moench, Chuck Dixon, Alan Grant, and Denny O'Neil, and Peter David. Of course, it includes the famous breaking of Batman's back by Bane and the rise of Azrael as a new armor-wearing, tech-focused Batman. I'm sure we'll see Azrael's rise in part 2, but I can't wait to see the whole storyline played out on screen. I never thought we would get an animated adaptation of that, so it's exciting to see them start to take a look at some of the popular comic book story arcs and adapt those.
I was actually surprised by this news because I thought that James Gunn was only going to start featuring animated projects that tied into his DCU. Projects like Creature Commandos.
That could be the case for this. For all we know, this could be a prequel of sorts, or like a flashback-esque story.
A prequel to the DCU version of Batman?
Possibly.
Interesting. It would be a good way to get much-needed exposition and backstory out of the way. That way people could just jump right in with a live-action movie, whenever that comes out.
I mean, since we've already seen Batman get his back broken on film in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises, I'm sure there's no real need to retread that same territory in live action, so this approach may just get that out of the way.
I am skeptical that this is actually true. It's interesting speculation.
Whether it is or isn't, I'm still pumped for it, because again, that's a fantastic storyline. It's the equivalent of the death of Superman, in my book. Just a pivotal moment in Batman's career.
Yeah, where stakes actually meant something.
Exactly. Just how we didn't know if Superman was going to come back, we didn't know when Bruce Wayne was going to return to the cowl. We weren't told how many parts the story was going to be told in, but it's at least 2. If they do 3, I'm here for it. My body is ready. But that does it for all the news for this episode. Let's go ahead and move on to the main event, where we find out who is going to win between the DC and Marvel sorcerer characters of Felix Faust and Baron Mordo. Okay, Felix Faust versus Baron Mordo. As I stated earlier in the episode, these are 2 dark sorcerer villainous characters within DC. Baron Mordo, of course, was played by Chiwetel Ejiofor in the Doctor Strange films. We haven't seen Felix Faust in live action that I'm aware of, but he has been featured pretty frequently in animated works.
Yeah, he had a really cool badass fight scene against Zatanna in Justice League Dark, I want to say the film was.
Right.
This is going to be kind of similar to our Dr. Fate versus Doctor Strange duel episode, I think. But considering that these characters are both villains, we're going to dabble more into the dark magic side of things.
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty fun. To explain the methodology behind our duels, let's go to our sentient duel simulator, Alfred Jarvis 9000. AJ9K, tell our listeners how you go about determining a winner in our duel matchups.
Yes, of course, sir. The way I determine a winner between the contestants is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using the character's statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling. In this case, I randomize the statistics along a normal distribution as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters are based on the official Marvel power grid from which the DC character's statistics are extrapolated. Additional stat categories are included such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception in order to create a more detailed and accurate simulation. The results of the 1,000 simulations provide a percentage of wins for each character. The contestant with the higher percentage is declared the victor, as they have a higher probability to win any given battle. In an equitable pairing, neither character should win 100% of the matches. The comic book stories have shown that there's even a way for Batman to defeat Superman, so the confidence rate of my method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the source material. My mathematical simulations are without subjectivity or bias. Feats are not the sole consideration, nor are fan votes tabulated for determination of the winner.
Thanks, AJ9K. Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations would play out beat for beat. I believe it's my turn to go first with the Marvel character's backstory, so let me tell you all about Baron Mordo. Karl Amadeus Mordo was born in the Transylvanian village of Varfmandra to Baron Nikolai Mordo and Baroness Sarah Crowler. His grandfather, Viscount Heinrich Crowler of Bavaria, sought revenge against the Allied powers after World War II and attempted to steal Nikolai's emerging magical power through a spell of transference. When the spell failed, Crowler ordered his daughter to marry Nikolai so that their child could serve as a conduit for the power he craved. Sarah complied, and 9 months later gave birth to Karl. Raised in a cold household, Karl's father was obsessed with restoring his homeland to feudal glory, while his mother regarded her son merely as a pawn in her father's schemes. When Crowler ordered Sarah to kill her husband, she obeyed and fled with Karl to Bavaria, where Crowler trained his grandson in black magic. After learning the truth of his father's death, Karl swore vengeance on both his mother and grandfather and vowed to rebuild a world ruled by his own power. As a young man, Mordo traveled to Tibet to find the Ancient One, a powerful sorcerer said to guard the secrets of true magic. In the Ancient One's Himalayan sanctuary, Mordo's body aged slowly under the effects of the mountain's mystical aura. Though the Ancient One saw darkness in his new pupil's heart, he chose to teach him anyway, hoping to guide him toward wisdom. While studying ancient scrolls, Mordo learned of the dread Dormammu, the ruler of the Dark Dimension. Against his master's orders, he contacted Dormammu, binding himself to the demon's influence. Mordo returned to Bavaria, sacrificing both his mother and grandfather to Dormammu before continuing his studies under the Ancient One, plotting to one day sacrifice him as well. You can learn more about Dormammu in his duel against the demon Trigon. When another student, Stephen Strange, arrived seeking healing for his injured hands, Mordo viewed him as a rival. Upon discovering Mordo's plot to kill their teacher, Strange tried to warn the Ancient One, but Mordo silenced him with a binding spell. The Ancient One was aware of Mordo's treachery all along and freed Strange, who accepted apprenticeship to stop Mordo's schemes. You can learn more about Doctor Strange in his duel against Dr. Fate. Furious at losing favor, Mordo abandoned the Ancient One's temple, restarting the aging process that had been suspended for him during his studies. Mordo and Strange soon became bitter enemies. Mordo's first attempts to defeat Strange included astral projection schemes and hypnotic control of servants to poison the Ancient One. Strange continually foiled those plans, proving himself the superior sorcerer. Mordo lured Strange into traps across Europe, manipulated ectoplasmic warriors, and even imprisoned the Ancient One, but each time was defeated. Seeking greater power, Mordo appealed to Dormammu, who amplified his abilities and sent him to destroy Strange. Together, they pursued Strange across dimensions, but Dormammu turned on Mordo for interfering in his duel with Strange and banished him to the dimension of demons. Strange later freed Mordo while rescuing other victims, and the Ancient One imprisoned him anew. Freed again after the defeat of the entity called Zom, Doctor Strange persuaded Mordo to help contain Zom's scattered evil essence, convincing him to act as the vessel for the dark power. Once empowered, Mordo betrayed Strange, attacking him with overwhelming might until Strange used the Staff of Polar Power to absorb his excess energy and banish him. Mordo resurfaced, pretending to be Doctor Strange during the Sorcerer Supreme's brief loss of power, but Strange regained his strength and exposed the deception. Obsessed with uncovering ultimate magical truths, Mordo pursued the time-traveling wizard Cisneg to the dawn of creation, witnessing the reconstruction of the universe itself. The sight drove him insane. Strange took him into his care, but Mordo later escaped and renewed his pursuit of dark power. When he robbed the San Gabriel archives at the Vatican, he attempted to unleash the Chaos Demon by sacrificing 13 victims, including the witch Jennifer Kale, but he was defeated by her and Man-Thing, whom you can learn more about in his duel with Swamp Thing. Mordo's lust for power often drew him into the service of other dark entities. He created the spectral being Azrael and sent him to slay Doctor Strange, later manipulating Man-Thing to do the same. During a battle that spanned time itself, Mordo returned to the mid-20th century and was ensnared by a plot involving Dormammu and his ancestor Crowler. Dormammu turned against both Crowler and Mordo, destroying them before Strange used their conflict to banish the demon once more. Afterward, Mordo was recruited into Mephisto's group called the Legion Accursed. You can learn more about Mephisto in his duel against Sandman. In time, Mordo's constant dealings with infernal entities took their toll, and he developed terminal cancer. Desperate for a cure, Mordo made simultaneous bargains with both Mephisto and Satanish, promising each his soul. When Mephisto and Satanish arrived to claim him, their conflict threatened to consume all reality until Strange exploited the demon's greed to sever their hold on Mordo, freeing him, though leaving him spiritually weakened. Seeking redemption, Mordo returned to Tibet, confessing his sins to Doctor Strange and asked for forgiveness. Strange granted it, and Mordo died from cancer in peace. He was subsequently pulled from the time stream and recruited by the Cosmic Collector to join the villainous Offenders team alongside Red Hulk, Terex, and Tiger Shark. Mordo and the group battled Strange and the Defenders across time and space before being returned to the exact moment from which he had been taken. Years later, Mordo resurfaced in South America, kidnapping a politician to lure his daughter, the mutant Monet St. Croix, so he could siphon her life energy to sustain himself. Monet tricked Mordo into thinking he had been cured and allowed him to leave, deluded. Not long after, Mordo appeared to die in Brazil, slain by Thor's enchanted axe, but his body later vanished. Mordo re-emerged during the period when the Empirical, a fanatical science cult, purged magic from Earth. Having survived by pledging himself once more to Dormammu, he attacked a weakened Doctor Strange in New York, briefly overpowering him before Strange was abducted by the villain Nightmare. Mordo and Dormammu clashed again, and when Dormammu attempted to destroy Strange, Mordo added his power to his old foes, helping banish Dormammu to Shumagorath's realm. Despite this uneasy alliance, Mordo quickly turned on Strange and was defeated once more. When Hydra seized control of the United States, a Dark Force dome enclosed Manhattan. Baron Mordo was appointed caretaker of the city and occupied the Sanctum Sanctorum, where he enslaved the Elder God Pluorg as his guardian. He captured several heroes, including Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist, but lost control when Doctor Strange, Spider-Woman, Ben Urich, and Kingpin rallied against him and reclaimed the Sanctum. Following these events, Mordo continued serving Dormammu's race, the Valteens, as an enforcer. In this role, he destroyed the demon Barashtak and freed Strange's former apprentice, Casey Kinmont, corrupting her with dark power and sending her against her mentor. After Strange restored Casey's soul, she banished Mordo back to the Void, where he remains, alive, scheming, and eternally plotting vengeance against the Sorcerer Supreme. And that is Baron Mordo's backstory. Powers-wise, Baron Mordo has access to a near-limitless number of spells and abilities. Through magic, he can project mystic energies as powerful bolts or protective shields. He can read and cast thoughts, cast illusions, and hypnotize. He can teleport and fly. He can also turn invisible and intangible and project an incorporeal copy of himself called his astral form. Mordo can transmute matter, warp reality, and materialize objects. He has limited time control abilities such as slowing, freezing, and even traveling through time. Also, he can invoke extra-dimensional deities for any number of spells, and often utilizes black magic, including necromancy, the magic of the dead. Baron Mordo is an expert in the occult and is a skilled martial artist, having been trained by Tibetan monks. He has occasionally carried or manifested a dagger for ritual sacrifice. And there you go.
The whole time I was listening to that backstory, I was like, are you looking off my sheet? Because there are a lot of similarities between Baron Mordo and Felix Faust.
It makes sense, because Felix Faust is a total ripoff of Baron Mordo.
I'm sorry, what? Felix Faust came out in 1962, my friend.
Well, Baron Mordo came out in 1963.
Exactly.
Damn it.
Exactly. Let me get into Felix Faust's backstory. Felix Faust was an ancient sorcerer whose recorded history dates back to around 5000 BC, when he rose within the African empire of Kor. There, the realm's ruler, King Namo, served as both monarch and guardian of the mystical flame of life, a source of near-limitless magical energy. Obsessed with seizing that power, Faust delved into forbidden rites, mastered the dark art of black magic, and summoned legions of shadow spirits to wage war against Nomo's kingdom. His sorcery poisoned the skies and drained the land, but Nomo absorbed the flame into himself, turning its power inward to banish Faust's soul to another dimension. For millennia, Faust's disembodied spirit endured imprisonment, sustained only by its hatred and hunger for lost magic. In the 1920s, an occultist named Decon Drake uncovered records of Faust's confinement and sought to release him, believing he would be rewarded with power. When Drake opened the dimensional gate, Faust devoured his soul and possessed his body. Though restored to life, Faust's magic was greatly reduced, forcing him to rely on familiars, grimoires, and pacts with demons to channel power. Determined to reclaim his former strength, he spent decades hunting cursed relics and manipulating occult societies. Over time, he fathered 2 children, Sebastian and Fauna, both born with traces of his arcane lineage. In his relentless pursuit of power, Faust later attempted to sacrifice Sebastian's soul to the demon Nibiros, but the ritual backfired, imbuing his son with magical abilities of his own. Faust sought to regain his lost abilities by summoning and controlling the demons 3, Abnegazar, Wrath, and Gast, ancient reality-warping entities imprisoned beneath the earth. To gather the relics that bound them, the Red Jar of Kalithos, Green Bell of Uthul, and Silver Wheel of Nyarlath, he magically enslaved the Justice League to retrieve them. Once freed, the demons turned on Faust, and Aquaman destroyed the spell's control circle, ending the attempt and sending Faust to prison. Over time, Faust's reliance on infernal power deepened. He repeatedly sold and repurchased his soul, each deal eroding his power further. In desperation, he attempted to deceive Neron, ruler of Hell, by offering an innocent girl's soul instead of his own. Neron saw through the trick and condemned him to a dimension reserved for magicians who abused the laws of magic. After centuries of torment, Faust escaped back to Earth, his sanity and power both unstable. He returned to prominence as an enemy of the Justice League and as an ally of various villainous factions, including the Injustice Gang and the Secret Society of Supervillains, serving as their arcane specialist. During this period, his strained relationship with his son Sebastian escalated. When Sebastian joined the Outsiders, Faust sent demonic agents to capture him, and in the ensuing conflict he recovered 2 of the Demon 3's relics, but Halo and Looker destroyed them before he could harness their power. You can learn more about the Outsiders in their duel against X-Force. Faust's ambitions reached their peak in a ritual known as the Black Baptism. He assembled infernal covens across the globe to siphon the life force of Earth's magicians into a single rite that would reset all magic under his control. Demon assassins abducted mystics including Zatanna and Deadman to power the ceremony. The Justice League, aided by Blue Devil and Sebastian Faust, disrupted the ritual. At its height, Felix attempted to absorb the captured souls, but Sebastian severed the conduit, collapsing the spell. The backlash stripped Faust of his stolen power and scattered his followers, forcing him back into hiding. Years later, Faust resurfaced posing as Dr. Fate, attempting to deceive Elongated Man into trading his soul to Neron in exchange for resurrecting his wife. Ralph Dibny saw through the ruse and reversed the trap, binding both Neron and Faust inside the Tower of Fate. Faust eventually escaped, but his reputation amongst occult circles fell even lower. You can learn more about Elongated Man in our Elongated Man vs. Medusa Duel episode. Following his escape, he allied with Professor Ivo, Solomon Grundy, and Dr. Impossible, posing as Deadman to trick Red Tornado into inhabiting a human body, while stealing the android's original shell for experimentation. Faust later joined Talia al Ghul and Cheetah in an attempt to recruit Black Alice into the Secret Society of Supervillains. When she refused, she turned his own power against him, using it to resurrect her mother. During Black Adam's quest to revive his wife Isis, Faust interfered again, replacing Isis's bones with those of Ralph Dibny to sabotage the resurrection spell. He later revived the real Isis himself and held her captive until she broke free. You can learn more about Black Adam in his duel against Apocalypse. Faust remained aligned with the Secret Society, assisting in the creation of the android known as Genocide by collecting the mystical elements needed for her construction. After the Flashpoint reset, Faust's history was rewritten. He was reimagined as the son of Magica, one of Earth's first sorcerers, and an heir to a long lineage of dark magicians. In the 1500s, he allied with Vandal Savage and trained an apprentice named Aurora, pursuing immortality through forbidden magic. During this period, he encountered time-traveling heroes Robin and Superboy, who disrupted one of his rituals and forced him to retreat. In the modern era, Faust became obsessed with finding the Books of Magic, a compendium said to contain all arcane knowledge. To acquire the secrets of the damned sorcerer Nick Necro, Faust sold his soul to a demon, trading his mortality for Necro's power. The pact granted him vast new abilities but left his body pale and corpse-like. Together with Nick Necro and Dr. Mist, he sought to seize the Books of Magic from the Justice League Dark. Their scheme was undone by John Constantine, and Faust was captured by Argus and confined within their Black Room facility. You can learn more about the Justice League Dark and John Constantine in their respective duels against the Midnight Suns and Brother Voodoo. During the Crime Syndicate's invasion, Faust was conscripted alongside Necro to construct a magical weapon called the Thaumaton, designed to harness and destroy divine energy. Working beside Enchantress, Sargon the Sorcerer, Blue Devil, and Zatanna, Faust helped power the device until the Justice League Dark sabotaged it in a battle at Nanda Parbat, leaving him powerless once more. Faust later reappeared among the occult underworld when industrialist Henry Bendix attempted to hire sorcerers to kill Midnighter and Apollo. He declined the offer, unwilling to serve others' agendas. His powers gradually returned, and his ghastly form faded. The extra-dimensional entities known as the Other Kind began consuming magical beings. Faust was among their victims. Found nearly mindless by Zatanna and Wonder Woman, he regained just enough awareness to reveal a clue to the sorcerer Mordo's location before retreating again into obscurity. And that's Faust's backstory so far. Now, powers-wise, Felix Faust is a master sorcerer with expertise in soul magic, necromancy, and infernal pacts. His abilities include spellcasting, energy projection, elemental manipulation, illusion, telepathy, teleportation, and summoning entities such as the Demons 3. He can bind, transfer, or resurrect souls, create magical constructs, and scry across great distances. Faust's power is largely drawn from external sources, like familiars, relics, grimoires, or demonic patrons, due to the degradation of his natural magic reserves. He is vulnerable to pure divine magic, and cannot safely channel it without a medium. Though physically frail, he compensates with defensive wards, decoys, escape spells, and other occult resources. And that's Felix Faust.
What a coward.
It fucking works, kinda. Like Baron Mordo, he doesn't have the greatest history of success.
That's the problem with villains and their backstories. It just turns into a long string of failures over time because the hero always wins.
Pff, lame.
But villains should not be discounted, or at least Baron Mordo shouldn't be.
And especially Felix Faust.
In a world where fantasies collide and heroes clash, one podcast network rises above the rest. Prepare yourself for the ultimate showdowns in comic books, video games, movies, and anime. The Dynamite Podcast Network presents Console Combat, where video game legends brawl every Monday. Dynamic Duel, where comic book titans smash every Tuesday. Max Destruction, where TV and action heroes battle every Wednesday. And Sendro World, where anime champions clash every Thursday. Join us as we speculate on the matches and, armed with the power of mathematical simulations, discover who will emerge victorious. Visit dynamicpodcast.com, where we settle the debate and settle the score.
But now that we've got their histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by simulations, not this speculation, but it's fun to imagine how this fight could play out. AJ9K, what are the rules of our speculation?
Well, I should say there are no rules, other than the characters have no prior knowledge of the other going into the fight. All they are aware of starting out is that the other character is a threat that needs to be eliminated. For the speculation, the contestants will begin approximately 50 meters apart in a nondescript environment that will have no bearing on the match itself, as no environmental statistics are considered in my simulations. The contestants must earn victory on their own merit.
Alright then, let's get into it. Felix Faust and Baron Mordo meet on the battlefield. who goes first.
You always go first, so I'm going to go first this time. Baron Mordo's going to start off by pulling out this dagger from his cloak, and he drags it across the palm of his hand, drawing blood, and that's going to summon this giant tentacle that erupts from the ground beneath him. It's going to be like 20 yards long, and it just smacks the shit out of Felix Faust, sending him flying across the floor and breaking all of his ribs.
All right, well, if you have a dagger, I'm going to say Felix Faust at least has like a small grimoire that floats in his hand. So as that tentacle is coming out of the ground, Faust's book is going to flip to a specific page that he's going to read from, and it's going to ignite that tentacle on fire and cause it to screech in pain and then just return back to the ground. And once it does that, Faust flips to another page and recites a spell that causes Baron Mordo's dagger to melt, and it just slips out of his grasp into a puddle on the ground.
Okay, so the dagger becomes a puddle. We'll say like the puddle's the size of a manhole cover. And Mordo casts a spell on it, and out of this puddle leaps this silver skeleton who's holding a sword, like a cutlass. And then like 5 more skeletons pop out of this puddle, and all 6 of them charge at Felix Faust and just stab his ass repeatedly.
Okay, but Faust, he's going to counter with a spell on his own shadow that's going to cause it to duplicate. And from the shadows emerge these dark, like magic Faust clones that are all going to blast the silver skeletons with these eldritch fireballs, and that's going to make those bones scatter all over the environment.
Okay, but Mordo is going to compress all of these shadow clones into a shadow ball of like dark energy, and it's going to continue to press until it becomes like this magical singularity, like a black hole that pulls Faust into it and sends him to like this dark dimension of pain and spikes, like a Iron Maiden dimension where he's pierced for the rest of eternity.
Actually, Faust divined from the scattered silver skeleton bones that Mordo was going to attempt to put him into a dark dimension. So he was prepared. He just turned invisible, and from his cloak, he pulled out this small doll that grew in size, and that got sucked into the dark dimension instead. And each time that doll gets pierced, it's actually Mordo that feels the pain, because it's like a voodoo doll.
Okay, well, once Mordo starts feeling the spikes from this voodoo doll, he's gonna pull out of his cloak a tarot card. And it's basically the same thing as like a magic Uno reverse card. So instead of Mordo feeling pain from getting pierced, it's Faust, because the voodoo doll now represents Faust, and Faust is getting poked, and it causes him to drop out of his invisibility.
Shit. Okay, well, once Faust starts to feel the piercings of his flesh, he telekinetically positions the doll within the spike dimension so that it's pierced in a specific way, like a stigmata combined with his chakra points, and that's actually going to amplify his power. So with these glowing lines connecting these pierced points on his body, this third eye is going to appear glowing on his forehead, and from it, he shoots this massive sized beam of magic energy straight at Mordo. And this can't be Uno reversed, by the way, because the card gets destroyed.
Whoa, wouldn't destroying an Uno reverse card just destroy yourself?
No, because it's like a draw 4 wild type of counter magic energy.
Shit. Okay, so the card gets destroyed. Mordo gets knocked down from the blast, but he manages to quickly throw up a magic shield that's like in the shape of this mouth, like a fanged mouth that feeds on Faust's third eye energy. It's going to absorb it and feed it back to Mordo, and this absorption is going to drain Faust. It's going to turn him into like this desiccated corpse, and like his soul just gets sucked right out of his third eye, and then he falls to the ground, just dead. And Mordo's like glowing with all this red evil energy that was fed to him.
Well, that's funny that you think Faust needs his soul.
Huh?
So Faust's body falls to the ground and splatters, basically, and it's going to get absorbed into the earth. But suddenly, from beneath Mordo, thousands of these tiny human veins and arteries quickly spurt from the ground and cover him in like a net. and that's going to leach into his skin, and that glowing red energy suddenly turns black as Mordo's magically poisoned. And slowly, his facial features are going to turn into that of Felix Faust, who is taking over Mordo's body. And since he's the last one standing, he wins the duel.
Well, I think Baron Mordo would realize that he's being magically poisoned by these veins and arteries from the ground. So he's going to drink a potion that he pulls from his cloak. And it's going to cure him of his magic poison. And he just pukes up Faust, who's just this like gross pile of biomass on the ground. And therefore Mordo wins.
Nah, but this biomass is going to grow Faust's head and like a semblance of a human body, like the creature from The Thing.
Okay.
And from that creature's body emerges a bell, wheel, and a jar, which are going to summon the Demons 3. And under Faust's will, they're going to reshape reality so that Baron Mordo's mind, like, inverts itself, revealing his darkest secrets and fears, and he's going to live out eternity tormented by his own nightmares. So Faust wins.
That's some dark shit. Kind of like a nightmare that Felix Faust wakes up from, because this whole battle was just a hypnotic illusion that Felix Faust was experiencing, while in reality he's bleeding out from being sacrificed by Baron Mordo to Dormammu.
Really? You're gonna pull the whole, it was all a dream?
Yep, Baron Mordo sacrificed Felix Faust to Dormammu, and that's what really happened.
Well, I guess we could leave it there. Either that happens, or we don't take the lazy way out, and Felix Faust actually traps Baron Mordo in his own nightmarish hell.
Let's leave the match there, input the stats, run the simulations, and come back with a winner.
AJ9K, hit it!
Inputting data, running calculations, processing results, simulations complete.
All right, I mentioned earlier that these characters had similar backstories, and it's not really any surprise they had very similar stats.
They're basically the same character, like speed, versatility, evasiveness, durability, perception, intellect, strength, range, damage. Their feats, their stats were all exactly the same.
They differed in one category, however, and that was fighting skill. Surprisingly, Felix Faust is one of the weakest fighters in DC.
Whereas Baron Mordo does not really fight, but it is established canon, and this is reflected on Marvel's official Power Grid stats for him, that he has some fight training from Tibetan monks. Considering that, Jonathan, tell me who you think is winning this match.
It's of course going to be close. I can only pray for a statistical miracle, essentially. I will say that Instagram thinks that Felix Faust is going to win. 60% of them voted in his favor in our Instagram poll.
Well, I think that's just a bunch of DC fans on Instagram jumping on the bandwagon because DC has won a few recently. They're going to learn today.
They might. I'm not going to lie.
Well, let's find out. AJ9K, the results, please.
Here you are, sir.
All right, the winner between Felix Faust and Baron Mordo is Baron motherfucking Mordo!
Yeah! Congratulations, you get to stay married.
Oh, I can't wait to show my wife this episode.
She'll finally respect you again. Can I just say how stupid it is that it came down to the fighting stat?
Well, I mean, if they're going tit for tat through all their 1,000 battles, at some point, things might turn physical because they've exhausted everything else. And I don't mean in that way. I mean like a physical fight. And if it comes down to that, yeah, Baron Mordo is going to take it. But really, I don't see it coming down to that very often. I guess in approximately like 37 matches or so out of the 1,000.
Wait, what were the win percentages?
Oh, yeah. Baron Mordo won 537 matches out of 1,000, whereas Felix Faust won 463. So it was 53.7% over 46.3%.
Okay, so pretty close. Not surprised.
Not close enough. DC just can't hang with how awesome Marvel is. It's embarrassing. You should be embarrassed for this loss. I hope you are, along with all DC fans. Marvel fans, go ahead and pat yourselves on the back. You did it. You did it this time.
Yeah, this time. This time you got lucky.
Yeah, Marvel fans getting lucky, unlike DC fans. Fucking virgins. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
AJ9K, help close us out.
Thanks for listening to Dynamic Duel. Visit the show's website at dynamicduel.com and follow us on Instagram at Dynamic Duel Podcast. You can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/dynamicduel and joining a tier that works for you, or by rating and reviewing Dynamic Duel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or on our website. Don't forget to listen to the other shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network, including Max Destruction, Senjo World, and Console Combat.
In our next episode, continuing Spooktober, we will be pitting the Lords of the Underworld against each other. Neron versus Hela.
That'll be a good one. I'm looking forward to that. And the episode following that, which will be our Halloween duel, which we'll keep a secret until our next episode.
But that does it for this one. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, John Starosky,
Zachary Hepburn,
Dustyn Balcom,
Miggy Matanguihan,
Nathaniel Wagner,
Levi Yeaton,
Austin Wesolowski,
AJ Dunkerley,
Nick Abanto,
Scott Camacho,
Gil Camacho,
Adam Speas,
Dean Maleski,
Devin Davis,
Joseph Kersting,
Josh Leiner,
Mike Williams,
and Paul Graves for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week.
up and away.
True believers.
Honestly, I tried to bring that Uno Draw 4 wildcard energy into daily life.